The 1960s were a time of bold ideas and rapid change, but not every story from that decade ended in peace or progress. Some ended in ways so strange and unsettling that people still struggle to understand them. In this video, we'll uncover 5 real deaths from the 1960s that were anything but ordinary. Events so bizarre and disturbing they still leave questions that no one can fully answer. It was June 19, 1960, at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium. Alan Stacey, a 26-year-old British driver, was competing in the Belgian Grand Prix behind the wheel of his Lotus 18 Climax. He was running in 6th place on lap 25, driving at around 120 miles per hour. If he finished in that position, it would have been his first Formula One World Championship point, a major milestone in his career. But Alan never made it to the finish line. Alan wasn't like other drivers. At 17 years old, he lost his lower right leg in a motorcycle accident. Despite that, he refused to give up racing. Using an artificial leg, he developed a unique driving setup with a twist-grip throttle mounted on his gear lever, allowing him to control the car without using his right foot. His friend, journalist Jaby Krombach, believed this design made driving harder in Formula One, but Alan didn't let that stop him. He built his first race car himself, a Lotus Mark VI, and after finding success, he moved on to a Lotus 11. His skill and determination caught the attention of Team Lotus founder Colin Chapman, who gave him a professional drive in 1957. Alan raced in events like the 24 Hours of Le Mans and various British circuits, earning wins and podium finishes that proved his talent. In 1958, Alan made his Formula One debut at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, but his car overheated and he retired early. The following year, he finished 8th at Aintree, his only full race finish in Formula One. Mechanical issues constantly held him back, but he kept working with the team to improve the cars. By 1960, Alan was promoted to Team Lotus's second driver behind Innes Ireland. His season started poorly in Argentina, but he soon showed promise, finishing 4th in a non-championship race at Silverstone. At Zandvoort, he was running 3rd before a transmission failure ended his best Formula One drive yet. Still, he looked ahead to the next race, Belgium. That weekend at Spa had a dark atmosphere. During practice, Sterling Moss suffered severe injuries in a crash at Bournonville Corner, and Mike Taylor's accident near Stavelot ended his career. But the race went on. Alan started from the back, quickly climbing to 8th place. On lap 20, another tragedy struck. British driver Chris Bristow lost control of his car near Bournonville and passed away instantly after a violent crash. Alan continued, now up to 7th. When Wolfgang von Trips retired, Alan rose to 6th, finally within reach of his first championship point. Then came lap 25. Alan sped through Bournonville at 120 miles per hour when a bird suddenly struck his helmet. Spectators saw the impact. The force likely knocked him unconscious or caused a severe injury. His car veered off course, hit an embankment, tore through hedges, and crashed in a field. Alan was thrown from the car and passed away within minutes, just a few hundred feet from where Bristow had died moments earlier. Some witnesses believed the bird strike caused instant fatal injuries. Others thought the crash impact did. But everyone agreed that the bird strike was the cause. Years later, teammate Innes Ireland confirmed that a bird had hit Alan's face just before the crash. Alan's passing was one of the strangest in motorsport history. That weekend, 4 drivers were seriously injured or killed, yet the race continued. Alan, who had overcome disability and mechanical failures to reach Formula One, was only 26 years old. Just a week later, he was supposed to race at Le Mans with Ireland. After his death, his friend John Whitmore took his place. Alan's first race car, the Lotus Mark VI he built himself, remains preserved by his family. Alan Stacey's story is remembered as one of racing's most tragic and unusual moments. A split-second accident that ended the life of a talented driver just as he was about to achieve his dream. It was August 17, 1966 in Campos dos Goitacazes, Brazil. 2 electronics technicians, 34-year-old Miguel José Viana and 32-year-old Manuel Pereira de Cruz, told their families they were heading to Sao Paulo to buy equipment and maybe a new vehicle for work. Both were skilled at setting up television transmitters. They carried cash and seemed focused on their task. But instead of Sao Paulo, they went missing. 3 days later, their bodies were found in one of Brazil's strangest mysteries. That afternoon, Miguel and Manuel boarded a bus, but not to Sao Paulo. They traveled to Niterói, near Rio de Janeiro, arriving around 2:30 p.m. Based on witness accounts, they first stopped at an electronics store, then bought 2 black waterproof coats at a hardware shop. After that, they went to a bar and bought 1 bottle of water. The waitress said Miguel looked anxious and kept checking his watch, as if waiting for something. That was the last confirmed sighting of them alive. Some witnesses later claimed to have seen the men entering a jeep with 2 unidentified people before heading toward Vintém Hill. At some point, the 2 men continued on foot, climbing into the dense hilltop vegetation. The 2 unknown companions were never identified. On August 20th, a boy named Jorge da Costa Alves went to fly his kite on Vintem Hill. While exploring, he stumbled upon a scene that would haunt him. Lying side by side were the bodies of two men dressed in formal suits and black waterproof coats. Both wore strange lead masks that covered their eyes, shaped like crude goggles. The boy ran to get help. Reaching the bodies was difficult. The terrain was steep, and police only managed to reach the site the next day. When they did, the scene was exactly as described. Both men lying on palm leaves, no visible wounds, no blood, and no signs of struggle. Nearby were an empty water bottle and 2 wet towels. The most curious item found was a small notebook. It contained technical notes about electronics and one chilling instruction. 1630, be at the specified location. 1830, ingest capsules. After effect, protect metals. Await signal mask. The handwriting did not match either man. The bodies were confirmed as Miguel and Manuel, but answers were scarce. The coroner's office was overwhelmed, delaying the autopsy for weeks. By then, the organs had decomposed too much for proper testing. No toxicology analysis was ever done. The cause of death was listed as undetermined. Later, authorities admitted that the organs had simply been left to rot. Some investigators believe the first person to discover the bodies may have stolen their money. None of it was ever recovered. With no clear cause, theories began to spread. A friend claimed the men were part of a scientific spiritualist group that tried to contact unknown entities. The lead masks were supposedly to protect their eyes from bright light during the ritual. The capsules might have contained hallucinogenic substances. Police later found mask materials and books about spiritualism at their homes. On that same night, locals reported seeing glowing lights over the hill. Some said they saw objects hovering above the area. A French researcher, Jacques Vallée, later visited the site and claimed to detect radiation traces in the soil. He suggested it could have been an alien encounter. Others dismissed this, saying the lights could have been lightning from a storm that night. Some speculated the men were struck by lightning, but no burns or damage supported this. Another theory suggested they were tricked by someone, given harmful capsules and robbed. Yet others thought they might have been conducting a dangerous experiment involving radiation. Every theory has gaps, and the truth remains unknown. The case was closed after 3 years with no resolution. But the image of 2 men in suits and lead masks, lying on a lonely hill with a cryptic note, still disturbs many to this day. It was January 3, 1961, in the cold Idaho desert. 3 men, Army Specialist John Burns and Richard McKinley, and Navy CB Richard Legg, reported for their night shift at a small nuclear reactor called SL-1. The facility stood about 65 kilometers east of Idaho Falls, in a lonely area known as the Lost River Desert, just 5 miles from a town called Atomic City. Their task was simple: routine maintenance to restart the reactor after the holidays. But before the night ended, all 3 men would lose their lives in America's first fatal nuclear accident. SL-1 was an experimental Army project from the Cold War era. The goal was to design a small nuclear reactor that could power radar and communication bases in isolated areas. It needed to be compact, simple to operate, and easy to transport, something soldiers could run without years of special training. The reactor was housed inside a tall steel silo. Inside, uranium fuel plates created a chain reaction, producing heat that turned water into steam to generate electricity. 5 control rods regulated this process. When lowered, they stopped the reaction. When raised, they restarted it. The central rod, weighing about 84 pounds, was powerful enough to start or stop the reactor by itself. Since 1958, SL-1 had been used as a training site, but it had ongoing problems. The control rods often jammed, forcing workers to use wrenches to free them, a serious safety risk. Despite these issues, the reactor kept running. On December 23, 1960, it was shut down for the holidays. Restarting it on January 4th would be handled by the 3-man crew working that night. John Burns, 22 years old, was married and with a young son, but his marriage was falling apart. His co-workers said he had a short temper. Hours before the accident, he had a heated phone call with his wife. Richard Legg, 26 years old, was a Navy electrician who had recently been promoted above Burns, which caused tension. The 2 men had argued before, and there were rumors of personal conflict between them. Richard McKinley, also 26 years old, was the trainee. His wife was expecting their first child. That night, their job was simple: lift the central control rod about 4 inches to reconnect it to the drive mechanism. Burns was assigned to lift it while Legg assisted. At 9:01 p.m., something went terribly wrong. A sudden blast triggered alarms across the facility. Firefighters arrived but were met with dangerous radiation levels. When rescuers finally entered, they found Burns dead on the floor and McKinley critically injured. Legg was missing. McKinley died shortly after being rescued, and his body was so radioactive it had to be wrapped in lead blankets. Later, Legg was discovered pinned to the ceiling by a metal rod that had shot upward during the explosion. Investigators later determined that Burns had lifted the control rod too high, 67 centimeters instead of the intended 10. The reactor instantly went critical, generating about 20 gigawatts of power, 100,000 times more than it could handle, all within milliseconds. The explosion blasted the 26,000-pound reactor 9 feet into the air. Some believed Burns accidentally pulled too hard on a stuck rod. Others suspected emotional distress played a role. A government memo even hinted at personal conflict among the men, but no proof was ever found. Many experts later said the design itself was to blame. The rods jammed easily, emergency plans were poor, and the workers weren't trained for such hazards. The men's remains were so radioactive that parts had to be buried as nuclear waste. By May 1961, the site was sealed with nearly 99,000 cubic feet of contaminated debris. What truly caused the explosion remains uncertain, but what's known is that on that quiet January night, 3 men carried out a simple maintenance task, and within seconds, the SL-1 reactor became the scene of one of America's most haunting nuclear tragedies. It was May 5, 1968, in Hollywood, California. Albert Decker, a 62-year-old actor known for his powerful performances, had just finished filming The Wild Bunch. He'd been separated from his wife of 25 years, actress Esther Guarini, and was now seeing Geraldine Saunders, a fashion model who would later create The Love Boat. When Geraldine hadn't heard from him in several days, she grew worried. After calling friends and getting no answers, she asked the building manager to open his apartment. What they found inside became one of Hollywood's most disturbing mysteries. Albert Decker was born on December 20th, 1905, in Brooklyn, New York. The only child of Thomas and Grace Decker, he discovered acting during high school and later studied pre-med at Bowdoin College before switching careers. In 1927, he made his stage debut and soon landed roles on Broadway, including Eugene O'Neill's Marco Millions. After a decade in theater, he moved to Hollywood in 1937. Appearing in The Great Garrick and later starring in Dr. Cyclops as a scientist who shrinks people, a role that made him famous. Through the 1940s and 1950s, Decker appeared in over 100 films, working with stars like Marlene Dietrich, Cary Grant, and John Wayne. He often played villains or serious characters, but his talent earned him great respect. Outside acting, Decker was deeply involved in politics. In 1944, he was elected to the California State Assembly, where he supported civil rights and workers' protections. During the McCarthy era, he openly criticized Senator Joseph McCarthy's anti-communist tactics, which led to him being blacklisted in Hollywood for several years. Decker eventually returned to Broadway, performing in Death of a Salesman and A Man for All Seasons. Colleagues saw him as serious, intelligent, and professional, never one for gossip or controversy. But his personal life was marked by tragedy. He and Esther had 3 children, but in 1957, their 16-year-old son John lost his life in a firearm accident, leaving the family devastated. The couple divorced in 1964. By 1968, Decker had finished filming The Wild Bunch, playing a ruthless railroad detective. Castmates described him as difficult and unpredictable, with one recalling that he made strange claims about being a doctor and planning to help people in Africa. After filming, he returned to his Hollywood apartment, but in early May, he stopped responding to Geraldine's calls. When she entered his apartment with the manager, they found him lifeless in the bathroom under extremely strange circumstances. His body was discovered kneeling in the bathtub with restraints and markings on his skin. A scarf covered his eyes, and the door was locked from the inside. Roughly $70,000 in cash and camera equipment were missing, yet police found no sign of forced entry. The coroner ruled the death accidental, saying it resulted from a risky private act that went wrong. No illegal substances were in his system, and there was no sign he planned to end his life. Geraldine and Decker's son, Benjamin, doubted the official explanation. They believed someone else might have been present and fled after the situation spiraled out of control. The missing money only deepened the mystery. When the story broke, tabloids sensationalized every detail, overshadowing Decker's decades of work and political courage. Fellow actors publicly questioned the findings, calling them impossible. To this day, the case remains unsolved. Some believe it was a tragic accident involving another person. Others think the scene was staged to hide foul play. Decker was cremated, and his ashes rest in New Jersey. His Hollywood star still stands, though his legacy was nearly erased by scandal. Albert Decker's death remains one of Hollywood's darkest and most puzzling stories, an ending as complex and mysterious as the man himself. It was May 4, 1961, in the Gulf of Mexico near Pensacola, Florida. Lieutenant Commander Victor Alonzo Prather, Jr., a 34-year-old Navy flight surgeon, had just finished one of the most dangerous missions ever attempted. Alongside Commander Malcolm Ross, he rose to 113,740 feet in a giant balloon, higher than any human had ever gone. For almost 10 hours, they endured freezing temperatures of -94 degrees Fahrenheit, and air pressure only a fraction of what it is at sea level. They had reached the edge of space. The mission was a complete success. The spacesuit they were testing worked perfectly. But as Victor waited on the gondola for a helicopter to lift him to safety, he had only minutes left to live. Victor was born on June 4, 1926, in Lapeer, Michigan. He grew up in a middle-class family with parents Victor Sr. and Gladys May First. At 17 years old, he entered Tufts College and joined the Navy's V-12 officer training program during World War II. From 1943 to 1945, he was stationed in Honolulu, Hawaii. After the war, he returned to Tufts to study medicine, earning his medical degree in 1952. For 2 years, Victor worked as a civilian doctor. Then in 1954, he rejoined the Navy as part of the Medical Corps. He was first assigned to Pensacola, Florida, and later to San Diego, California, where he trained in aviation medicine and became qualified to fly both airplanes and helicopters, something rare for a doctor. He wanted to understand the same challenges faced by the pilots he treated. Victor then served as medical officer aboard the aircraft carrier USS Shangri-La for 3 years, followed by a post in Morocco as a flight surgeon. He later worked in the Pacific out of Pearl Harbor and was reassigned to Bethesda Naval Hospital in 1959. His growing reputation as a skilled and fearless flight surgeon soon led to his involvement in a top-secret program. In 1960, Victor joined Project RAM at the Naval Medical Research Institute in Maryland. The mission was to create and test spacesuits capable of keeping humans alive in space, a critical step as America prepared for its first manned space missions. The suits had to withstand freezing temperatures, radiation, and almost zero air pressure while allowing mobility. Victor tested the suits in water tanks, low-pressure chambers, and finally, high-altitude balloon flights. The last test would be the most dangerous. The balloon, named Stratolab 5, was 300 feet wide and filled with 10 million cubic feet of gas. Beneath it hung the small open gondola where Victor and Malcolm would sit. The suit he tested, the Mark IV full-pressure suit, was light but extremely strong. If successful, NASA planned to adapt it for its upcoming Mercury missions. At 7:08 a.m., the balloon lifted off from the USS Antietam. At 9:47 a.m., it reached 113,740 feet. The suits held up perfectly, and both men completed their tests. After almost 10 hours, the gondola gently landed in the Gulf of Mexico. Everything had gone as planned. A helicopter crew moved in for recovery, even though that wasn't part of the original plan. Malcolm Ross was lifted first, narrowly avoiding a fall. Then Victor stepped into the rescue hook, but lost balance and fell into the water. His faceplate had been opened during descent, allowing water to rush into the suit. The rescuers didn't realize he was in danger until it was too late. Victor drowned within minutes, dying in shallow water after surviving near space. President John F. Kennedy later called Victor's wife, Virginia, and honored him with the Navy Distinguished Flying Cross. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery. The altitude record set that day still stands. In 1962, the Victor A. Prather Award was created to honor those advancing space safety. Later, astronaut Alan Shepard flew into space wearing a suit based on Victor's design, proving that his sacrifice helped make space travel possible.